Recording in progress.
It's real. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hi.
Good morning, class.
Yes. Does everybody have what they
Mm,
need today?
mm-hmm.
You have a beautiful dress on,
I do.
and I have
I
my
might.
Packer Super Bowl shirt on.
I did think, actually, I was laughing to myself about 5 minutes ago, thinking this is going to potentially get to the point where you're rocking up in your pajamas and I'm
Yes.
in a full ball gown. That
I'm
I've
not
gone the
even
other
going to put
way.
my hair in a ponytail. It's just
Yeah,
going to be like,
you'll
this is how
just,
I woke up.
you'll be in bed. You'll
Yeah.
do it from bed
Yes.
because it's so early.
Uh,
And I will be wearing a tiara and
yes.
full
Sipping
regalia, like
tea.
an enormous dress that is so huge that I can actually just sit in the dress
Yes.
and just rest in it. Yeah,
Oh, let's do
yeah. So
that.
I was making myself laugh with that earlier.
Awesome. So, what are we
So,
talking about today?
well, I would love you
To
to tell
explain?
me because it was your distinction,
Uh-oh.
which full transparency, I didn't understand
All right.
yesterday the way you said it.
Okay.
So we had a little bit of a chat yesterday, and I had it, and now it's maybe flown away again.
No worries. I still got it. Um,
Cool.
what I thought would be fascinating, or what seems to be resonating a lot with clients and people that I'm working with, is this idea of surrender, allowing, accepting, and how difficult that is.
Mm,
And the distinction between the surrender and like letting go, giving up, walking away, throwing your hands in the air. That a lot of times it feels like we're giving up, right? That like in battle, when we surrender, when we wave the white flag,
mm,
it means we've lost.
mm,
And there's a different perspective around surrendering, especially when it comes to all of the things that we cannot control, which is pretty much everything except for ourselves. So there are
mm,
more things that we cannot control than things that we can.
mm,
And I'm always struck by humans' desire to control things other than ourselves. Like we almost cannot help it, and yet it brings us a ton of suffering.
mm.
Does that make sense? How'd I do?
Yes, that makes sense. I
Oh, good.
think um, where I got lost yesterday and where I could easily get lost again is semantics, is the words being used to describe the two sides of the distinction. Um, Allowing, accepting, um, you said surrender.
Hmm.
But for me, I think the distinction that I see is the difference between me throwing my hands in the air, giving up, saying there's nothing I can do about this.
Yes.
It is what it is, but not being at peace with it, being annoyed with it being the way it is. And then the other side is this sort of allowing it to be what it is. So me not fighting with it, whatever it is, the circumstances, the person, the event, and releasing my attachment
Yeah.
to something going a certain way or someone being a certain way, including myself, releasing my attachment. I get into an internal fight with myself when I'm not showing up the way I want to be, the way I think I should be. I'm not doing, being, performing, feeling the way I think I should feel.
Yeah.
And I'm attached to myself being a certain way, doing a certain thing.
I really like the detached versus attached
Mm,
because I think that one is probably the most clear. That when we're, and all of these are like ways that we try to control, right?
mm,
Or at least when we notice we're controlling and then it's like that's bad or that's wrong to control anything that beyond ourselves. So then we're like, we better stop it, we better fix it. And then from that mindset, that's where we're still attached, but that's where we're like, well, then I'm just going to take my ball and go home, or you can do it yourself, or I'm
mm,
out. But there's still a
mm,
lot of energy around it. It's
mm,
not complete, there's no resolution. Whereas when we allow, accept, we release our attachment to the thing.
mm. I'm thinking of a couple of nights ago um, before Ruben and Casey went off to Madrid. There was a hiccup with their with their accommodation.
Remind us how old Ruben and Casey are for our
Ruben's
listener.
Ruben will be 23 on the 1st of August, and
Oh,
Casey is 20,
okay.
2.5 years between them. Um, and so they had this kind of problem quite late at night, 10 o'clock at night. They were like, oh my God, this isn't what we thought it was going to be. Oh my God, we need to fix it. We need to change it. We need it to be different. And I was offering advice, and it was falling a little on deaf ears. So
Mhm.
I did that thing of taking my ball, leaving. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
well, clearly what I'm saying is not wanted. So I'm just going to leave you guys and go upstairs. I'm just going to go
Okay.
to bed.
What were you making it mean the moment
I
that,
had it. I had it that they should listen to me,
how
and
come?
that my help should be graciously received.
Yeah,
Um,
got it.
and it wasn't being graciously received.
Mhm.
They were kind of like, whatever, it wasn't being graciously received. They had it, and they knew what they were doing, and they didn't need my input. And it was, for me, it was kind of like, if you can't receive me and what I'm saying this way, then I'm leaving. So I only gave myself two options. I gave myself the option of being what I was saying and the way I was being, but what I was saying, being fully accepted, fully listened to, or I was leaving.
Yeah. Both
Um,
ways are actually attached, right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Even
totally.
leaving, there's a lot of FU energy still in it.
Oh yeah, total FU
You're not
energy.
leaving like, oh, it sounds like you guys have it. I'm gonna bow out. Good luck on your trip.
Mm,
It was like, you can eat, you know what, a bag of things, and I'm out.
yeah, and I did that twice.
How did that go?
I don't know. It was fine. It was fine. I stayed in the end for the whole show. I stayed for the whole that till 1:30 in the morning while they were sorting everything out. And in fact, one of them had gone to bed, and the other one was like pacing up and down, going, I can't, I'm really wired. I need to just calm down.
Oh
And
my
then that
gosh.
one went to bed. And then I was like, okay, this is all sorted. Now I will go to bed. Um, but yes, that was a small real life
Yeah,
experience of me, like, I'm sharing wisdom here,
yeah,
and me wanting to control the
yeah.
way it was received. And when it wasn't received the way I thought it should be received,
Mhm.
I was, I went off in a half, and I did that twice.
I have another way of looking at the control because I wonder if there was an even deeper level of control that you were wanting to assert. That, yes, I want them to receive my wisdom and my brilliance. And then there's, for what purpose though? What was the other thing that maybe you were trying to control?
I was trying to control how it went.
Yeah, how
I
come?
was trying to fix it.
Yeah,
Because, oh, Allison, you toad.
I know. It's my Green Bay Packers shirt.
You toad. Because I didn't trust them to sort it out.
Hmm.
that what you're fishing
And
around
what
for?
were they, well, what were they experiencing?
What, as a result of my
No,
way of
as
being?
these things were happening, there was all these snafus, right? And what was happening
Mm.
to them?
Well, I don't know because I didn't ask.
How were they behaving?
Um, they were slightly, they weren't panicky, but they weren't happy with what
Hmm.
was happening.
Hmm.
They'd booked somewhere and it was like completely the wrong type of place. So they
Yep.
needed to book somewhere else and they were running out of time to cancel one place. And they were like, we can't book the other one till we know we've cancelled this one. So there was a lot of kind of like um, on a knife's edge. There was
Yeah.
sort of tension in the
Yes.
room.
Yes.
Yeah, there was tension in the room.
Hmm.
They were they were both busy working on their laptops to try and fix the problem.
Yes.
And and they were stressed.
Okay.
One of them more obviously than the other, but none of us is immune to stress.
Very contagious.
Um,
Yeah.
and we know that one of them, when they're stressed, will just sleep. so, so,
Oh.
and the other one will like, I'm going to bed now.
Yeah.
And the other one will be kind of like pacing up and down, just different ways of dealing with the stress. And I was hovering around because I wanted to make sure they were okay. Obviously, I'm a loving mother. And I wanted to make sure that,
I
obviously
love that.
evil
You
is,
snuck that in,
yeah, yeah. Well,
obviously, because that's what a loving mother would do.
I'm a loving mother, an evil, controlling hag as well. But there is that element. I'm a loving
Yeah.
mom, so I'm not going to kind of just, for me, I'm not going to just walk off and go, whatever.
Hmm.
But even in that, I've got story about how a loving mother behaves,
Yes.
and I think ultimately I was thinking, shit, they're not going to sort this out. They
Yeah.
need my help. They didn't
Well,
ask for my help. Although, after I had walked out of the room twice in a huff, like a 14-year-old, one of them did say, no, you stay because you are helpful. But I mean, that's got a little bit of a reassuring. It's all right. You can come back and play with us.
yeah.
It's okay.
So the deep down part of control is usually because somebody is experiencing something and it's making you uncomfortable.
Mm. Yeah,
You
I
were
was
uncomfortable with
concerned.
their
Yeah.
with the tension and the busyness and the stress.
I was uncomfortable with the idea that it wouldn't work out for them.
Yeah.
So I
And what
wanted
would
to
they
stay.
experience as a result if it didn't work out?
Yeah, yeah. Is that a question or a
Mm,
rhetorical?
both. It's rhetorical and
Um,
you can answer it.
okay, what will I plump for? Um, I was uncomfortable with how it might work out. I didn't want it to go wrong for them and them not have a nice time. I want them to feel fabulous all the time.
Isn't that? Because you're a loving mother. Let's just put that in there.
Because, yeah, can we just say
I'm going
that
to get
again?
you
I'm a
a
loving.
t-shirt or a bumper sticker.
No, preferably a ball gown,
A
tiara,
tiara. Yes, a
a tiara,
tiara.
please, that says I am a loving mother.
Oh,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's my very recent example of wanting to control what's happening
Yeah.
in human beings that are not me.
Yeah. And there's nothing like there isn't anybody that's listening to that story that doesn't get it. And there isn't anybody
Mm,
that's listening to the story that's like we've all been there. We've all done that thing.
yeah.
We run around the world and tell people stuff all day long. I had an experience. It's a group of young, high potential, probably going to be leaders at some point. Not all of the people in this, like a group of 15 people. They all work at the same company,
I
but
hope they're not listening and they're going, am I the one that's not going to be a leader at some point? They'll
well,
be,
they're high potential.
am
They're
I?
not
Am I?
leaders right now. Like in
Yeah.
terms of, I meant like formally titled leaders.
Okay.
They are all leaders in their own right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're doing the leadership development work, and they've asked me to come in. And I did an exercise where I asked them to think about um, how much time, like percentage wise, do they spend at work asking questions versus telling And I was blown away because they were like, I hardly tell at all. I'm always asking. So they were like 75 asking, 25 telling. And I walked out of there, I was like, it's like when the emperor has no clothes, right? You're like, do they not get? Because I like to think of myself as being really good at asking questions. It's kind of what I do for a living. And I
Mm,
still tell. I catch myself telling a lot.
mm,
So I think we're blind to the amount of telling that we do. And I
mm,
think telling comes from a genuine, it always comes from genuine concern, care, love. It rarely lands. So when you're
mm.
in with your sons and you're saying like, try that, do this, it's like boop. It just,
Yeah, bounces off. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
bounces
have
off.
a I have a another group that I was working with yesterday, and they also are a group of leaders. They're doing leadership development, and I said, guys, I have an acronym for help because they're like, well, it's I do these things because I'm helping, and I was like, neat. My mother tells me I need to wear lipstick because she's being helpful. She really is trying to help me. The impact is it's patronizing and a little insulting. That's not her intent.
Mm,
And I said, so I have an acronym now for help, which is hardly ever lands positively.
mm,
Most of us, in our attempt to help, we use this word help. I just want to help. I just want to, be a good mom, whatever.
mm.
It's like code for I need to control the situation because I'm
Yes,
uncomfortable with how things are going right now. I cannot be
yes,
with my sons the possibility that this might not go well, and
yes.
have them
That's really,
experience that.
yeah, that's really well put. I couldn't be with the possibility that it wouldn't work out for them.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah,
And
damn.
that's real.
Mm,
And there's a little bit of like heartbreak in there. When you see somebody
mm.
suffering, it is genuine and natural to want to end that suffering for that person. And sometimes we
Yeah,
can.
yeah. And there are the stories, aren't there? That there's what's natural. I was in the lake this morning
I love it.
and I had my head out of the water because I swim like a little turtle with my head out of the water. I can put my head in the water, but I swim like that because I want to see where I am. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful. I want to drink it in. And I heard somebody alarm. Somebody was distressed
Uh-huh.
and they were, I don't know, 20 meters away from me. And I kind of called over and I was like, are you okay? And they were like, yeah, I'm fine. But their head was like this. And I was like, are you sure? So I swam over to them and I said, we wear a thing called a tow float,
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
TOW.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was TOE, which made me feel really sick.
It's not even on my foot.
Yeah, and I was like, ugh. But it's a TOW float.
Yes.
So
Towing.
I went over and sort of, it was tied around my waist and I said, hold on to this, just take a breath. And then I swam back with that person. You know, that was an opportunity to genuinely
Yeah.
help. We need a different acronym where it did
Yes.
land positively.
Yeah.
And when we were halfway back, she was in the middle of the lake. You can't touch the bottom. She didn't have a tow float.
Mm.
And she had a wetsuit on, which made her buoyant, but she
Yeah.
was panicking a little bit. And it was the first time she'd swum in the sea, but it was the first time she'd been in a lake and first time she'd been on her own. Um, so that was really useful. That was genuinely helpful.
Yeah.
And I swam back alongside her with her
Yes.
holding onto the float. And
Yeah.
then when we were nearly at the shore, she let go of the float and she said, I'm just going to stay with you. And I was like, yep, I'm going to stay with you. And we just
Yeah.
stayed together and we went back. And that was really, really helpful. But that was more of a slightly life and death situation.
Hmm.
Um, but those are rare.
Agreed. It's yeah, if we put a percentage on it, less than half of the time are we ever going to be in a place where the help is genuinely desired, maybe not even asked for, and it's like there's a lot of gratitude when you show up.
Yeah, she didn't ask me to help, but she was clearly not
Having
okay.
trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, she was having a little bit of trouble. And but the rest of the time, normal, for me, it's a lot less than 50% of the time am I swimming about saving people's lives. It's like,
Pamela Anderson. Yeah,
it doesn't happen very
I
often.
just saw you in
So,
Baywatch with your
yeah,
red.
so, yeah, so most of the time, and the thing is, I think I pride myself on the fact that I am a little like the people in your leadership
Mm,
program. You know, I wrote something recently in an application form for something and said, I'm I'm all about eliciting and asking. But I mean, we saw that, 48 hours ago in my own home,
yeah,
kind of like do it my way.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And then Miss
You don't want my
Piggy,
help?
yeah. And off I went.
Fuck you. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So where else and how often is it showing up where it's just not noticed,
right. And I
where
don't
I'm not
think,
noticing it.
yep, I don't like the beauty of teenagers is like they'll help you see that if you
Yes.
ask
Yeah.
them to.
Like we said last week,
You
the,
should
the
just,
leadership program, are we going
telling
to rent
you,
them out?
I
Yeah.
don't know how to make this happen, but you get like I think you spend 6 months, you get maybe you get two teenagers, right? Or
Mm.
maybe three.
So
Because
you're
you need
outnumbered.
a little bit, right? Yeah. And then somehow they have to live with you for 6 months. And I don't know what that looks like. I can imagine it's a really good reality show as well as an amazing leadership development program. So I really like this idea. I'm not sure. We got to move that forward. It's a
Mm.
different podcast.
Mm. I've
Um,
made a note. It's on the agenda.
so I have another client that I was trying to make the distinction around like what is supporting somebody versus helping somebody.
Mm.
Like can we draw a line between those two? Um, because what happens with people who um, I have met people for whom um, their way or their can't think of the word, the way that they show love and care is by caretaking. And that is their way of loving. Some of like me, I am a very physical, I will hug you, kiss you, sit on your lap, like bring it all in. Let's just get close. That's my
Mm.
way of loving people.
Mm.
For some people, it's caretaking. It's bringing them Kleenex. It's making them a sandwich. It's like sheltering them from things. It's protecting them. It's,
That's me. Hmm.
well, we all have it all, right? So this person is an owner of a business, very successful business, and yet his way of showing love and care for his team is protecting them, telling them, giving them the answer, making sure that they're, all the things are taken care of. And he's exhausted.
Mm.
And they're not appreciative. They're like your sons
Mm.
because they're all full-grown adults and they didn't ask. And
Yeah.
so we were trying to like understand, okay, when are we helping versus when are we supporting? And how do you make that distinction? Because it's not wrong to help. That none of this is to say like we just let people flail in the lake by themselves and they'll figure it out. That's a lesson that they'll learn and it's uncomfortable for them, but they'll get it. Like that's not what we're
Mm.
saying. But we
Mm.
really err on the side of controlling all the things.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious why you picked the word supporting as opposed to helping,
Yeah,
because I don't know what the technical definition is of the two words, what the difference
yeah,
is between the two. But I was thinking in the lake this morning about the difference between working with and helping slash supporting.
yeah,
And I see helping, we're coming back to semantics again, our
yeah,
own
yeah, yeah,
personal definitions
yeah.
of words, which we're, perfectly entitled to have.
Mm,
Um, but to me, I was sort of landing on, it's working with. I'm working in partnership with people,
yeah.
as opposed to I am supporting them slash helping them.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
the
I see
distinction I would
help
make.
as like You're coming in and you are coming from a place that is energetically above them. I know the answer. Here it
More
is. I know
knowledgeable.
how. Boom. And that, like, the dynamic between then becomes like, boop. Now somebody is above somebody else.
Mm.
That's why sometimes when my mother tries to help me by telling me to wear lipstick, it feels patronizing because she puts herself in a position that she knows better.
Yeah, it's the knowing better.
Yeah. Whereas support, or as you would say, working with, has us both. And so the practice for this particular client was, before you do anything, your practice for the next 2 weeks is to ask,
Mm,
how can I support you?
mm,
What would you like in this moment? Before like jumping in and grabbing them out of the lake and
mm.
right.
That would have been a great question for me to ask.
Well, in the moment, yeah, when we're sitting here on a podcast talking about it, it's super cerebral, right? Like, well, we're going to ask first. But when you're in the moment, you have to really be intentional and catch yourself, which is hard.
I mean, even to be fair, at that point, what can I do to help? Would have landed just as well as, how can I
Yes.
support you?
Yeah.
You know,
And
and maybe a little bit more, feels slightly more like natural language. What can I do to help,
yeah.
guys? As you're frantically, and they may have said, make us some tea, or you know, pour us a scotch or whatever it would have
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
but they would have then been able to choose, or
Yep.
like, nothing, we don't think there's anything you can do. But yeah, I didn't ask
Mm.
at all in that situation. And I see working with as being a collaboration. So you're
Yeah.
co-creating with
Yes.
someone,
Yes.
whereas and I do get the distinction you're making between, and I will at some point look up the difference between helping and supporting, and I'm sure we'll find we'll find an example where they mean the same thing, and we'll find other
Absolute
definitions
language.
where they don't mean the same thing. That's all fine,
Yeah.
but yes, I think the working with that whole idea of collaborating with somebody
Yeah.
and working in partnership is very different from coming in as almost like a consultant. I know how to sort this
Move.
out. Move over, lads. I'll
Yeah.
get this sorted for you.
Yes. And here's the bigger problem for most of us, parents, leaders,
Mm,
anytime we are either officially or unofficially in charge of things, is we, I don't like this word, I don't have a better word, but we train people how to be with us. So if I have been running a business for years and people have come to me and I have fixed, solved, rescued, cheerleaded, given answers, advised, then the first time I ask, hey, how can I support you? What are they going to say? They're going to say, I don't know.
mm,
Because we have trained them to not ever think about that. If they show up at my office and they're like, hey, here's a thing that's happening, and I look at them and I'm like, oh gosh, how can I support you? They're going to be like,
mm,
what? You just do the thing you always do. Like, tell me what to do, fix the problem, give
mm,
me the
mm,
answer, whatever. Because I've also had leaders. I have one person who I've worked with for 2 years now, and he's very, very rigid. And so it's
mm,
something that I did, and that was a practice for him. And he came back 2 weeks later, and he said, nobody could answer me. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. He's like, that's why I have to fix it. I was like, oh, oops. Or
mm,
it could be like they need 2 more weeks. They might
mm.
need 2 more months or 2 more years. But if we have
Yeah.
trained people, like
Yes.
I'm thinking of kids, right? If my kids are out there flailing and they can't do something and they call me and they're like, "Oh, I need a thing," and I give it to them or I fix it for them or
Mm,
whatever, I'm basically training them not to fix it themselves and to
mm.
not even know what they need for support.
I have this idea in my mind that when my children were younger, it was easier for me to see my role as training them to be empowered. Now, that could be a lie,
Uh-huh.
but I feel that I had more of that sort of, oh, they don't know as much. They're 2 foot tall. My job is to train them to tie their shoelace. My job is to support them,
Yeah.
to work with them to tie their shoelace. Yeah, I'll put my finger on the knot while
Yeah.
you tie the bow.
Hmm.
So I was working in partnership with them. I think that is true. I don't know what percentage of the time. Something has shifted as they have grown, and I now see them. Part one eye is seeing them as these fully formed adult humans. The other part is seeing them as incompetent buffoons, because I see them as fully formed adults. So
Yes.
there's some kind of
Yes.
gap. I don't know if you're tracking this, but there's some kind
Yes.
of gap. When they were little, I didn't expect them to know.
Yeah.
Now that they drive, vote, have sex, do
Whoa.
all the adult things, strike that, we'll edit that out, but do all the adult
Yeah.
things, when they show up not knowing,
Yeah.
I then think, duh,
Yeah.
why don't you know?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, but all of this is sort of happening on top of the driver inside, which is what I can and cannot be with.
Yes.
So all of those things are behaviors. They are products of
Yeah.
what I can and or cannot be with. And clearly in that example, I couldn't be with the uncertainty of
Yeah.
this not working out okay for these people.
And they would be so disappointed.
Yes,
And that's really hard to be with.
but they would possibly never get into that situation again. I mean, we know that people do repeatedly we all get into the same
Especially
situation,
young adults.
many, many times
Yes.
before we go, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in some ways, I was robbing them of the opportunity to have their own experience because I couldn't be with it not working out, which
I,
comes back to go.
could you not be with it not working out, or could you not be with it, the experience that they would have of it not working out?
I'm not sure I see the difference really. That yeah, I couldn't be with it not working out for them
Because
because I'd be sad.
you would be sad
They would be sad.
because
They would
they
be
would be
sad.
sad. That's
Yeah,
what I
because
mean.
they would
Yeah.
be sad. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I couldn't be with it not working out for them. I couldn't be with them being sad, with them having to experience the consequences of their choices.
Yes.
So and all very, I was going to say, very sophisticated. I don't know how sophisticated it was to storm out of the room and stay. I didn't storm, I huffed. I huffed out of the room twice.
Of course you did.
But I was under I wasn't operating consciously
Yeah.
like, oh, I want to control this situation. It's only with hindsight that I can see
Yeah. Yes.
what I couldn't be with and what I was trying to do,
Yep.
which was to control everything. So where does that leave us
Mm.
as human beings? Where does that leave us knowing that, you know, we there are I wasn't involved in any of the decisions that took them, these two young men to this place.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't in control of that process,
Right.
as with many hundreds of other things in my life that I'm not in control of. I desire certainty. I desire the feeling that I'm steering the ship and I'm in control.
Yeah.
Um, and when I'm attached to things looking like I'm in control,
Yeah.
I'm possibly, I don't know, my sentence is petering out.
I got you.
Go.
I think you hit the nail on the head that humans really love certainty. It's probably why our brain, um, when there's like an open loop, we create a story to close the loop, and then we get a dose of dopamine. Our our brains reward us for creating the story, right?
Yeah.
Whether the
Mm,
story is true or not, we still get the
mm,
hit. So
mm,
we're driven to close the loop. We're driven to create certainty, to have certainty.
mm.
And what I say is when we try to control something other than ourselves, we're trying to manufacture certainty,
Mm,
even though it's a fool's errand, like
mm,
we talked about yesterday, because
mm,
we don't get to control anything. Having come through a pandemic, it's a great example where you're going through your life and then suddenly the world shuts down. Like that's
mm,
weird, right? I couldn't have prepared for that. I didn't know that that was going to happen that day in March 2020.
mm,
I had manufactured so much certainty,
mm,
but it's manufactured. It is fake. It is false. And then because I can't be with uncertainty, when uncertainty shows up, I don't have a muscle for managing it.
mm,
So the long way around is to come back and say, okay, so what does that mean for me? My desire to manufacture certainty is normal. And what there is to do is for me to be with more uncertainty, to be with more sadness, to be with more disappointment, to be with more grief,
to be
loss,
with what
anger
is. Yeah.
in myself.
Mm,
For instance, my husband has a very low threshold for emotional intensity. In his brain, that is no bueno. And
mm,
so the minute things start to ratchet up, he literally, I call it getting flooded like a car, an old car, where
mm,
you're like trying to start it and you pump the gas and then you flood the engine and then it won't start. Like that is how he is just like doink, and he can't. He has no facility for things. And so he tries to control his environment such that we don't ever get emotionally intense.
mm,
So what there is for him to do is to be with more emotional intensity in himself so that he can be with more of others.
mm,
So you let go of the certainty and you say, okay, I intellectually I get that I can't
mm,
have certainty. I mean, that doesn't
mm.
mean that the rest of us will follow, but intellectually we all know that. And all there is for us to do is to be with more inside of ourselves. My No, you go.
And that is not to say that we then wallow in the grief, stay in the uncertainty, that's the end of the story, that we
Right.
stay there. It's that, and I am making this cause and effect by being with the uncertainty rather than pushing it away, pushing it down, hiding
Mm-hmm.
it. We then have more capacity, more facility to bring, you know,
Yeah.
our mind back online and make some choices in the face of what's in front of us.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I got lost at the end that I don't even know about, like, can I get to the place where I make choices about what's in front of us? But yeah, I think like the idea of stimulus and response, our brains are super efficient. So we
Mm,
create a lot of automaticity around things.
mm, mm.
So if we use the example of
I
my,
suppose I'm thinking about responding rather than reacting.
there we go. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we
That's what
can
I'm
like
thinking.
pull these apart, now I've
Mm,
got a little bit of space to like choose
mm,
something. I might not choose differently. I might
mm.
still give the advice. But at
Yeah.
least here I can be like, am I going to give the advice? Oh, I'm going to give the advice.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm not going to give the advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Totally. If I can't be with uncertainty, I will react
yes.
automatically to
Yes.
get away from that.
Yes.
Move over,
It's a
let
hot
me get
stove.
in here and fix it.
Right.
Um, if I have more agency, more capacity, not agency, more capacity and
Yes.
facility with uncertainty, I can
You can
be with it for a moment. People who are listening, I'm doing kung fu breathing moves right now, but I can be with that,
Yes. Yeah.
and that gives me a moment.
There's more range.
Hmm. gives me
There's more.
a little bit of thinking time where I can choose my response
Yes.
as opposed to that immediate reaction because I can't be with.
Yes.
We understand what we're talking about.
We're pretty smart.
We've got it.
Brilliant. Okay.
Mm,
Well, that's it then. As long as you and I have it figured out, the other
mm,
7 point whatever billion people on the planet are on their own. All right, what's your
mm.
takeaway?
I think my takeaway is the how can I help? How can I support you? What can I do to support you? Which is, we've said that sort of it's almost like a behavioral change. Doesn't mean that anything's necessarily changing inside me, but I think that's a really nice practice to take a beat and ask that. So I'm going to take that on. I'm going
Mm,
to, scrawl that in red lipstick on the wall and remember, actively choose to say that
nice.
once a day or something. And I think also my takeaway is where am I helping as opposed to working with? Where am I inserting myself with
Yes.
the illusion that I'm working in partnership with someone, but I'm actually not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a third takeaway,
Oh, good.
which is, oh gosh, there are lots of things I can't be with.
Ugh.
There's stuff, I don't know how much there is, but there's stuff I can't be with. Um, mm, what's your takeaway?
So I'll be totally transparent. My takeaway right now in this moment is that my husband has just woken up. He's feeding the dogs, and I know that he will then enter the room that I'm in is also the same room where the front door is, and that's going to interrupt my thought and I want to control that. And my mind was like, I should have said something. I should have told him not to do the thing until the pocket. So that I'm literally inside of a control moment right now in all
Mm,
of like the manufactured certainty versus like, can I just be with
mm,
that sometimes dogs bark, sometimes there are noises in the background, sometimes I get distracted, and all of it
mm,
is fine.
mm,
Like my takeaway is I am so driven to control
mm.
everything.
Well, yeah, Ali, because that's a tiny thing, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
small
yeah.
thing. And yes, you can put a sign on the door next time and to control it.
That's not what
And
it's
and
about.
but there'll be something else. That's
Yes,
just a small thing, and catching your brain going, ah.
yes. I cannot control my husband's behavior, whether or not my dog's, I mean, I could, but again, that's not what this is about. It's about
No.
can I be with more distraction?
Mm,
Can I stay focused even when things around me are loud or
mm,
surprising? Can I stay focused and present?
mm,
And that's a place for me that I really struggle.
mm.
So,
Yeah, and there's always learning, isn't there? So it's like, oh, okay, next time I will say I'm doing the podcast and I will put a sign on the door and I'll say, can you use the back door? But then there will always be something else. That's not to negate that piece of learning and that development, that
yeah.
developmental step and kind of like, oh, when I'm podcasting, recording in progress, red light
Yes.
outside that door,
Yes.
whatever. And there will be another place where you're like, oh no, I need to control that. I
Yeah.
can't be with that.
And it takes my attention away from this. It takes
Mm,
my experience and it shifts it, right?
mm,
I was totally with you. I was in this room, I'm in the podcast, and suddenly there's a little part of me that's like focused on all of the
mm,
stuff that may or may not happen in the
mm.
next 5 minutes.
I feel like I've got loads more to say on this now. However, we can end and
Oh,
we can have this as a
yes.
running topic, I
Do you have
think.
anything like super brilliant to close us with that you would like to
No
say?
pressure.
Yes. It could just be mildly brilliant.
um, No, nothing super
Yeah,
brilliant or even mildly brilliant
I
to
love it.
close it with. Just that it's a continuous practice and an ongoing conversation, actually, for me, that I'd like to be in with you and others.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
All right.
because I'm doing this all over the place.
Yeah, me too. All right, so let's say goodbye in Portuguese.
Oh,
How do you say goodbye in Portuguese?
ciao.
Oh, that's so easy.
Mm,
Ciao. That's such a great way to say goodbye. Ciao, ciao.
mm. Ciao, ciao.
All right,
Mm.
lady.
Beijinhos.
Oh, I don't know.
Kisses.
Beijo. Okay.
Beijinhos. Kisses.
Beijos. All right. On
Beijos.
that
Yeah.
note, I'm going to stop recording.
Do it.